that for time immemorial. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet, live, and play on this land, and we thank all generations of Indigenous peoples from the past to the present who currently continue to extend the sharing of this land with us. We recognize and deeply appreciate their ongoing connection to this place. We also recognize the contribution of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous people who now make this region their home, and who have both shaped and strengthened this community and our province and country as a whole. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and ongoing importance of Indigenous peoples to the area must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real and in our communities, and to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across the country. Any declaration of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof? Seeing none, we have a presentation of the 2023 audited financial statements for Frontenac Islands. And Ms. Mahone from KPMG will be joining us via Zoom. Welcome. We look forward to this.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Sounds
good. All right, thank you. Before I get started,
Not mute just yet. Just, are you muted at your time?
pardon?
It's like, say something now and we'll check.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Good job. Thank you.
We can hear you.
All right, perfect. So before I get started, I'll just ask, logistically wise, do you want me to share my screen to go through the presentation, or will you scroll through on the one that's shared up now?
Katie, if you want to share your screen, that'd be fine.
All right, give me 1 second. Oh, I spoke too soon. I don't have access to share. I don't know if you can flip that on. Oh, I have access now. I think this should be. All right, I think that should be popped up.
Yes.
Thumbs up. All right, perfect. All right, well, thank you everyone for having me here today to present the results of the fiscal 2023 audit. It was a busy audit year. You'll see when we get into the report, clean. So maybe I'll say that just at the very top, clean audit, but it was a busy audit year. Lots of audit activity, audit standards to adopt. So I know it's a pretty full agenda, so I'll just pop into the report, flip through the first few pages. We'll go through all of the highlights in more detail throughout the report. So I'll start on page number 5 here, overall status of the audit. So as was mentioned, my name is Katie Mahon. I'm the audit partner for the Township of Frontenac Islands financial statement audit. I believe this is my 3rd year being involved in the audit once KPMG had taken over from your predecessor auditors and those firms merged together. So in terms of going through the audit this year, it was the same audit team as last year from our end, which is always helpful from our perspective, just to keep that continuity rolling. In terms of status of the audit, at the time we had sent this report, we had a few file assembly things to do on our end, but happy to say those are all fully complete. So after we have our conversations here today, we'll send over the management representation letter for the CAO and treasurer to sign, and then we'll be in a position to finalize the statements and wrap up fiscal 2023. In terms of changes from our audit plan, the overall highlight is there were no changes from our original audit plan. However, we are required to do a few look back procedures at the end of the audit. So the biggest one would be materiality. So materiality is set at the beginning of the audit based on the prior year figures. Those are the figures we have at that time. So we are required to do a look back at the end of the audit just to make sure all of the current 2023 figures are in line with the percentages that the Canadian auditing standards lay out for us in terms of where we can set that materiality figure. So we did that look back, and everything was still within those benchmarks. So we were able to keep that initial materiality. You'll see later in the report, but materiality is based on overall expenses, and it was set at 200,000. That is the overall aggregate materiality. What we refer to as the posting threshold, so the amount that we audit to, is significantly less than that. It is a straight calculation. It's just 5% of the total materiality, so $10,000. So $10,000 is kind of the takeaway number for yourselves to think about as we went through the audit. If we found any differences in excess of that 10,000, we had discussions with management and determined whether any entries needed to be made. Also, you'll see as we go through the report, as I mentioned, very clean. There were no corrected entries put through, and we do have 2 uncorrected, which we'll speak to, but they're really just kind of catch up from the 2022 year. So going at the end of 2023, going into the 2024 year, very clean, nothing rolling forward into 2024, which is nice to see. From the other planning perspective that we are required to communicate to council are any significant areas of focus in the audit, any significant risks. So we only have one significant risk built into the audit. It is the fraud risk from management override of controls. I spoke about it last year, but I'll emphasize it again this year. This is what we refer to as a presumed fraud risk, meaning that it is not unique to your organization. It is required from those Canadian auditing standards that this be built into each and every audit in Canada. So every audit has this flagged as a significant risk. Again, nothing unique to your organization. However, because it is flagged as a significant risk, we do have to plan and complete specific procedures to address it. And the takeaway, for this group is that very last line on the screen there, that we did the work and no findings to bring to your attention. So everything looked as it should be. In terms of the financial statements themselves, I believe they've been pre-circulated. So I'm not going to go through them today in detail. The next 2 pages are just some screenshots to go over the highlights. So I'll touch on those highlights, but then certainly at the end of the presentation, if there are any further questions on the specifics in the numbers or specifics in the notes, we can go through it then as well. So from a balance sheet or statement of financial position perspective, starting at the top with your financial assets, your cash and investments continue to be in a strong position. So from a liquidity perspective, no concerns to note there. The taxes receivable line, the 886,000. This is one I know we also talked about a little bit last year. So it has increased year over year. But what we like to do is look at that tax receivable line as a percentage of the overall levy, because that percentage is one of the indicators the ministry also looks at in terms of financial health. So even though the amount has gone up this year, the percentage of the total levy itself has very slightly decreased. It's very slightly, I'll say almost consistent with the prior year. So there isn't really any increased risk or any increased items to flag there. However, and to follow up on the conversation from last year, in terms of the ministry guidelines and indicators that they look at for the taxes receivable as a percentage of the total levy, this would be in their moderate range, getting relatively close to the high range of risk. So what I would say is you are still in moderate, so nothing really being flagged there, nothing different from the prior year. But I have had some conversations with the treasurer just in terms of what's happened since December, and continuing to have an increased focus on bringing that amount down, hopefully getting it closer to a 20% range. So under 10% is low, under 10% is low, going from 10 to 30, you're moderate, and then over 30 is when you get into high. So you're right around kind of between 26 to 28. So we're looking to get you down to more of a 20 for next year, and then potentially even lower than that on the go forward is kind of the range we're hoping to get to. And I know that's also on the treasurer's agenda as well. So I think just with turnover, didn't have as much movement there as we maybe wanted to see for 2023, but as I mentioned, expect 2024 to see that number come down. Other than that, the other financial asset is the accounts receivable. That's mainly government grants, the MTO ferry subsidy, HST receivable. So, collectability not a concern, which is usually what we look at when we see that accounts receivable line. So everything looks good there. And then getting into your financial liabilities, your accounts payable, the prepaid property taxes, deferred revenue, that's all really just timing of the cash coming in or out at year end. So again, nothing really special or significant to note there. The deferred revenue obligatory reserves, I do just like to remind everyone every year across the municipal sector, that's where we see the development charges, the CCBF, formerly the gas tax, that's where that's held, as well as any of the building department surpluses go there. So they are separate from your other reserves in terms of the financial statement presentation. So that's where we see them on that financial liability line. And then under there is the asset retirement obligation line. So we'll go through that. We have a slide later on in the presentation as well. I won't go through all the technical details of it, but that was, I would say, the big new item, big ticket item for the 2023 audit. The asset retirement obligation standard was required. It was a mandatory adoption to adopt for 2023. Historically, there had been a standard around landfill. That standard no longer exists. It's been rolled into the ARO standard. But what the ARO standard does is it takes not only landfill but then broadens up anything that would have a legal requirement of remediation to be costed and put on your balance sheet here. And the big thing that it catches is really asbestos in building. So that was a big lift. I would say all the audits in the municipal sector across the board this year have had a lot more work go into them just in the adoption of that standard. A big kudos to your finance team because they really worked and put everything together to allow us to audit it. Anytime it's an initial adoption year, there's always extra work around kind of the scoping and the completeness and all of that to get the number to where it needs to be. So again, I won't go into the technicalities of it because it is pretty technical, but that is a new line item. So if you were looking at the statements last year, the line item would have just been called landfill. And so now it's on the new standard of the asset retirement obligations and includes about 140,000 related to the asbestos in buildings costing, which management did also use third-party engineers to help get that costing number. And then after that, we get down to your non-financial assets. Sorry, the biggest piece there obviously being your capital assets, and that changes just every year, your additions, less your disposals and amortization. So nothing overly significant to bring to your attention there. And then the next page is, oopsies, the next page is the statement of operations. So revenue and expenses, and I can apologize, it's small on my screen, so I can only assume it's probably quite small on your screen as well. But again, I'll just touch on some of the highlights. So from a revenue perspective, we did see an increase in taxation. I know the various tax rates are different, but when we look at it across the board, for the township on an average was it approximately 9% increase in the levy. And then in addition to that, Howe had the special levy dedicated for the road improvements that was added in. Government transfers were about 500,000 less than the prior year. And that was really just some provincial funding that was one time in the previous year, didn't recur in the current year. And then everything else is relatively aligned with budget last year. The one other item I might just draw your attention to is the license and permits. It had increased quite a bit from the prior year. When we looked into that, the biggest component of that really was the increased activity in the building department for applications and permits there. And then from an expenses perspective, expenses overall actually decreased a little bit. On the income statement, it is shown by department, but note 14 in the statements does break it down by category. So you see on note 14 by salaries and materials and that breakdown. When we look there, there was a slight increase in salaries, really just inflationary, nothing too significant. But the drop really came from the materials. So just kind of overall less activity from a materials standpoint, which is where we're seeing that decrease in expenses come from. And then from there, we add in your capital items. So we have the capital grants that come in from those obligatory reserves. And then we have the government capital grants as well. And then a slight loss on the disposal to give an overall surplus of the year of the 121,000. Let me pause there, see if there's any questions on the numbers before we get back into the audit report, or we can save it for the end as well.
We just have one quick question. And we're talking about the risk of fraud and that, and what went through my thoughts was whether or not setting up a finance committee, and that might be a further safeguard in that to make sure that there's always an extra set of eyes type of thing.
Yep, sorry. So I will apologize. I only heard the end of your question, but I think it was around whether or not a finance committee would be worthwhile to have a bit more of a dedicated focus throughout the year on some of these items. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would say certainly in larger municipalities, almost all of them either have a finance committee or an audit committee. That their main role would be to look into these items, do kind of what we're doing here today. They get the audit presentation and they would just recommend up to council. We do see it less and less in some of the smaller municipalities, just from a function of number of councillors. So I would say it's not necessarily a requirement. It's not a requirement from our end or from the Municipal Act and to have a finance committee or an audit committee. It's more the level of comfort from council. And if council, wants to have a bit of a higher level of comfort, more of a deep dive, and feels the finance committee, could do that, then it's something, we certainly would be happy to work with and happy to help kind of set up those logistics. But it's nothing, I would say you're not unique when I would compare you to kind of your peer group from a population perspective. You're not unique in not having one. But again, if you wanted to, certainly we see them quite often as well.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Katie Saunders, thank you. On your statement of, statement of operations, under revenue, fines and penalties, what is that?
So your fines and penalties, that would include the interest on your overdue taxes as well. Any fines, from permit bylaw fines would go into that line item as well. I don't have all of the detail of the GL accounts directly in front of me. I might ask, I think your treasurer is present. I don't know if he wants to maybe add any commentary to that as well.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yeah, the fine and penalties is mostly interest on tax arrears. As Katie mentioned, the balance is quite high, so it's probably accumulating kind of a higher balance than we normally see. Also why it's kind of increasing year over year. So it's mainly the tax piece that it's relating to.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Continue on, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the rest of the report is really more kind of housekeeping items, but this page up here has a lot of words on it. I won't go through it because I already mentioned it. This really gives a bit more flavor into what the asset retirement obligation new standard is. I mean, key takeaways for council, I would say, is it was a mandatory adoption. There really wasn't a choice in adopting. We worked with management put it all together for us. They did use the help of the external third party engineer as well. And at the end of the day, we did our audit work, agreed and concurred with the numbers that management put forward. So everything looked good on that end. This next page, there were some other standards that had to be adopted as well. Again, mandatory adoption. However, the good news is even though we did have to make sure that they had no impacts, we did have to do some additional work there. They did not have any impact on the numbers themselves. So it was a much cleaner, much less time intensive adoption versus that asset retirement obligation standard. From an audit misstatement perspective, I'll flip to the next page. I think it's a bit easier to see it. So as I mentioned, we didn't have any corrected entries that went through the statements, meaning that the statements that management provided us is the statements that you have in front of you today. We did, however, have 2 uncorrected misstatements. So this is where that concept of materiality comes into play. So as long as the uncorrected misstatements are under our materiality threshold, we're still able to issue that clean audit opinion, which we have done. You can see the total is the 109,000 here, made up of the 2 items. They both relate to, they're going in opposite directions, so they net each other, but they both relate to 2022 cutoff issues, I would say. So items that in 2022 rolled through and corrected themselves in 2023. And again, I would say from a control perspective, with the turnover in staff and the new treasurer on hand, I would say, not expecting there to be any more, cutoff entries moving forward. Both of them had to do with ministry grants, and some of the grants happen on off calendar because the ministry is a different year end. So there is sometimes some confusion mirroring up your December year end to the grant reconciliation periods. Can be one of the more complicated areas of the revenue streams and the reconciliations. But again, on the go forward, I'm very comfortable to say that, I know there's a lot of focus going in to make sure those are being fully reconciled, kind of 2023 and on. So this gets us all fixed up, and we'll move to 2024 with nothing, no roll forward impacts from any of these. So it's really kind of a cleanup year, if you want to think of it that way. And then control deficiencies. So internal controls are a very important aspect of the audit. We are required to get a thorough understanding of the internal control environment. To the extent there are any significant deficiencies, we would flag them here to you today, but happy to say and to note that there were no significant deficiencies. We have noted a few more process improvement, kind of best practice observations, similar to prior years that we've provided to management that they'll look at and consider implementing in the next year as well. But again, nothing that rose to a level of a deficiency. As I mentioned, really just more process improvement styles of notes. This page here, I've already referred to it. It's just listing it all out, all the new standards that were adopted. So again, nothing to add here. And then other financial reporting matters. So again, a bit of a reminder, I believe we had a conversation on this last year as well. So Big Sandy Bay is not included in the numbers. I did have a conversation with the treasurer as well, just to kind of go through the history and the background on why it hasn't been included. So we continue to just note it here because what is required as part of the audit is that because there is such a close connection, is that we do review that relationship annually to see if it does need to be consolidated. So just because it wasn't consolidated last year, if the composition has changed, the relationship has changed, that doesn't necessarily mean it wouldn't be included this year as well. So we do that analysis each year. So we'll continue to keep that note in just as a reminder that we do that analysis. And if that composition relationship changes, we'll be sure to let council know of that as well. And then the next 2 pages here before the appendices, really just, again, more housekeeping items. I won't go through them. You can see the takeaway under finding no matters to report, which is exactly what you want to see. And then from an independence perspective as well, no matters to report. To the extent we completed any non-audit services that could have any potential or perceived conflict, we would note them, but we don't complete any non-audit services. So everything is clean on that end as well. And then after that, we're into the appendices, which I won't go through in detail, but happy to take any questions if there are any. I will stop sharing my screen just for right now because then I can see everybody and see if there are any additional questions.
Any questions? Seeing none. I think we can proceed.
Madam Mayor, I believe she's done her presentation, so unless council has any questions, then
I thought you were gonna finish off the last few pages. Or are you done? Katie?
Katie, you have finished your presentation, correct?
Yes, sorry, I can hear you. Sorry. Yes, presentation's complete. So all we're looking for would be the motion and approval. And then we'll be able to provide the letters to get signed and be able to finalize the statements.
Okay, so I'll go more formally around the page. Councilor Devon.
No questions, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Councilor Hall.
No, just like to thank Katie for a great presentation.
Okay. Councilor Saunders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Katie, in non-accounting terms, if you would, when I look at the statement of operations, we went from a loss or a deficit of 619,000 in 2022 and the surplus of 121,000 in 2023. I assume that you would indicate we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, so I would say it is a little bit more intricate than that. If you have that statement of operations in front of you, one of the items at the bottom, capital items, so some of those capital grants, the way that the accounting for the township works and all the municipalities is that you get those grants, capital or non-capital, and you do record them in the year you get them, even if you don't spend them, and then you just put the excess to reserve. So some of the in-year surplus deficit is really just timing of when some of those grants are coming in, when the levy's coming in versus when the cash is being spent. So what I would say is maybe a little bit of a better representation in terms of, improvement in overall kind of financial health is looking at below the annual surplus, you have the accumulated municipal equity beginning and end of year. So the end of the year is the 22.8 million. If you have the financial statements in front of you, and I can share my screen if you don't, there is note 10, and maybe I will just share my screen here very quickly. If you have note 10 in front of you, note 10 is a breakdown of what makes up that accumulated municipal equity. So what makes up that 22.8 million. So by far largest is the investment in your capital assets. And that's a sunk cost, right? Like those dollars are gone. So you really want to look at these other two areas. So from an unfunded liabilities perspective, that asset retirement obligation is unfunded. I would say that is also not overly unique to yourselves. A lot of the kind of non-cash liabilities are left unfunded. And then here's where you have your reserves. So this is one of the areas that it is always nice to look at to say, okay, we had a surplus, maybe you have a deficit in here, but how much of that is actually falling to what's left in reserves to be able to spend for those future costs. And that has increased. So the 2.3 to the 2.5 million. So we do like to see that number not necessarily has to increase every year, but we do like to see that number is at a minimum 20% of your overall expenses. Again, that is one of those financial indicators the ministry puts out. So you are in excess of that. That tells us, from an operating perspective, no real concerns there. But what is important, and we don't have this as part of the audit, but potentially your treasurer might be able to make a comment on it, is looking at those reserves and the reserve balance and how it relates to your longer term capital plan. So whether that be a 5-year capital plan, a 10-year capital plan, and whether, there's enough in reserve to meet those needs, whether or not you're going to be looking at other funding sources, potentially new debt, potentially special levies, and how that reserve balance really mirrors up with not only the operating costs, which are fairly self-sustainable, but that longer term 5 to 10-year capital plan. So hopefully that makes sense. And maybe Jesse, if you want to add a few comments to that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, so speaking onto the reserves, I guess, it is actually a known fact that we're currently working on developing a capital plan, so I think that's also common from prior year's audit to kind of increase our long-term financial planning. From a reserve perspective, I would just say in a general sense, Wolf Island has very strong and healthy reserves. Where Howe Island, there might be some more budgeting and planning to build those reserves up. I will say there was a lot of capital work completed in 2023. There was a significant amount of road work done. So again, I think we're kind of in the process of developing those long-term plans. Like I said, it's somewhat different from Howe and Wolf Island just based on reserve balances.
So, Kate, thank you. That's kind of what I was trying to get at, trying to understand where we are financially. I mean, when I think of these numbers, it looks like, well, we're in great shape. But on the other hand, we don't have a capital plan in place, so we're still in a very, I would call it, cautious situation where we need to be really careful about what we're spending money on. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I would say that that's exactly right. Unfortunately, the financial statement audit is great at telling you where your money's been spent historically. It doesn't, speak to the future, which sometimes can be difficult to try and mirror up the financial statements with kind of how are we doing in terms of what are our future needs. And so really building out that future capital plan and doing some longer term financial sustainability and strategic planning, I think we'll be able to probably better answer that question for you. But I think all the steps are happening now to be able to give you that answer you're looking for. And there's certainly nothing at this point in time that's giving any significant red flags from an operations perspective.
Well, thank you. Very, very thorough answer. Appreciate it.
Okay, Councillor Ackley?
No comments.
Okay, just a small point in that, I think the difference being Howe Island's reserve is still under $100,000 at this point in time, so that's where the buildup is really going to be needed for Howe Island to have more reserve on that. From your report though, on page 20, that I mentioned it last year too, we don't have a Hope Island. And in 14C, it talks about Wolf Island and the mainland and Hope Island and the mainland. So somewhere along the line, I'd like to get that clarified. I think it's, we have ferry operation services we look after from Wolf Island to Simcoe. And we have ferry operation services from Howe Island to the mainland. And that, but Hope is not involved, other than making sure everything works out for us. So if that could be cleared up at some point. I just have one question under that same area of culture and recreation. The library is from Kingston, and I'm just not sure if that should be mentioned under our audit, because that's Kingston Public Library and that, but I just didn't know. Okay.
I apologize. I'm having a hard time hearing. Everyone else seems to be okay, but just the mayor in particular, I'm having a hard time hearing.
Okay, I'll speak up then. My point is that on 14C, we don't have a Hope Island. And I mentioned it last year, and that we have a ferry that we look after from Wolf to Simcoe. We have a ferry from Howe to the mainland. And that
Yes.
we hope evolved. And the other question I had is really around under recreation and culture, that we have libraries listed, and the library is out of Kingston. So I know we have a small amount, and maybe that's why it has to be listed in. It just caught my attention.
Okay, yeah, well noted. So what we can do, if you're all right with it, we can leave it for this year, and then we can do a bit of a deeper dive on it next year. I think your question 14C is pretty straightforward. We can update that. And then 14F, if there is, even if it is a transfer, for usage of the library, it would have to stay, but we can certainly do a bit of a deeper dive on that next year and get all those descriptions cleaned up.
Well, and aside from that, thank you very much. I think it's a wonderful audit. I think we're heading in the right direction. And compliments to our new treasurer and the CAO for working, and we can figure out whether or not the finance committee in the future might be a additional piece in that, but it's much better than when we first came in and facing a very large deficit. So I'm very pleased with that. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeBlancy, seconded by Deputy Mayor Saunders, that council thank Ms. Mahone from KPMG for her presentation of the 2023 audited financial statements, and that council approve the 2023 audited financial statements as presented.
Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Okay, now we're on to the consent agenda. And I'd like to pull July 8th council meeting minutes. Yeah. Never mind, I went for that one. Okay. The mover and the secondary for adoption.
Moved by Councillor Holton, seconded by Councillor Ackley, that the July 8th, 2024 public and council meeting minutes be adopted as presented, and that the information items be received and filed.
Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Information items. A lot of,
We just did that one on there for,
no, we did
both,
no, we did 4.1 for the minutes. Now
but
we're
the
going
motion that I read was for the minutes and the information items.
well, there were several on those.
That's okay, if council agrees that, we want to go back and address the information items, if anybody has anything that needs to be pulled out.
Okay. I'd like to pull out the TSC August 6th meeting minutes. I have questions about that. The posting of the notification letter, the FMSC and TSC July 23rd, and the Wolfhound survey that was completed by myself.
So Madam Mayor, I got the TSC, the FMSC, and I apologize, I missed the one in between.
The 019-8767.
Oh, MNR, okay.
MNR notification.
Madam Mayor, just to make sure we
Yeah.
stay within our procedures. The motion was approved. Do we not have to go back and,
If all members of council agree to readdress the information items, we can do it. If the majority is not, then we would proceed on.
so that's a vote?
But I did not hear anybody, yes.
So,
Okay. Anybody in agreement with pulling any or all of those items? Okay, no agreement, I guess they go through. In future, and then I'd like to have separate motions for that, so it doesn't occur again, that one is the consent agenda for the adoption, you see the minutes and the other for information.
No problem, but that is the purpose of the consent agenda.
Okay. Now we're at staff reports. The administrative report from the CEO.
Moved by Councillor Holton, seconded by Councillor Dubois, that administration report AD 011-24 be received for information. And I'm open to any questions if council has any questions with regards to the report.
Councilor Jablonski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No question this time.
Okay, Councilor Holton.
No questions. Pretty good report. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Saunders.
No, thank you.
Councilor Radcliffe.
No, thank you.
Okay. Under, I have a question under the fire report. The joint application for protection of Cow Island and Wolf Island fire stations. Just wondering where that was applied for and how much.
Madam Mayor, through you, I will address that to Chief Quinn.
So through you, Madam Mayor, the two members of council, the Office of Fire Marshal will be distributing $30 million over the next 3 years, government grant. 10 million this year, 10 next, and 10 the year after. The fire services, they look at it based on municipalities and then how many stations within each municipality. So Chief Hawkins and I submitted a joint application identifying items. The criteria for the grant is items had to fall into the area of methods to reduce risk of cancer. So it's very specific criteria. So we looked at the first item being what's called an extractor, which is washing, the ability to wash bunker gear after fire, get the contaminants out of here. And we looked at gloves and hoods, and that would then cover off what we would hopefully try to get approval for.
We have a figure that we asked for.
Each department, each municipality was strongly urged to not exceed more than $8,000 to $10,000 per station. So in the case of Frontenac Islands, we applied for 20,000.
Thank you. In this report, and that, I think part of it is, this page here, the Howe Island
Correct.
report. We don't have one for Wolf.
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, Chief Hawkins did not provide one to me at that time for preparation of the report.
Okay, and since it's a CAO report and that, were there any other meetings or anything else other than this piece of emergency services? Was there anything from Public Works?
With regards to emergency services?
No, not regards to the CAO report on administrative report.
There's Public Works in there, yes.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Okay. Guess I'm just looking for, probably will come up when we get to the budget meetings.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so any other question? All those in favor of accepting this? Carried. Now we have a report from the finance, FN 009-24. For annual conference expense reimbursement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would you like me to just speak on the report briefly?
I think you submitted it, right?
Yeah, so the purpose of this report is, Madam Mayor Judy attended the annual conference back in late August in Ottawa. She submitted a few expenses for reimbursement. At the time, I don't believe the attendance of the conference was approved by council. So the purpose of the report is just to kind of list the expenses, the remaining budget, and then just to get approval for the expense reimbursement.
Okay. Thank you. And at this time, that, I think this would be an appropriate time to review the report and that for what went on at AMO. And it was to be part of the package.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it was, I apologize, I thought I had added it under the information items, but I have provided a copy of your report to each member of council, so everyone does have it there in front of them.
Okay, so just to highlight between the 18th and the 21st up in Ottawa, where we had delegate status for infrastructure. And I attended, and the county had initially put in for the hotel expense because hotels disappear very quickly and we had no budget passed at that time. But when I got there, I also found out I was registered as a quote social pass. I'm not sure whether that is on our end or from the county end because it was to be there for delegate status, not for presenting. And our Ministry of Health meeting unfortunately was canceled by the CAO on the 19th. And that, when there was supposed to be a presentation regarding the medical clinic for rural isolated and remote, for nurse practitioner funding, as well as oversight of paramedics that Councillor Giovanni was going to be presenting on, because there's upper tier in that I can't do that because it's been passed as a motion up there. So when that was canceled, Matt, it was unfortunate, but we still had the infrastructure, and I'm not clear whether or not we had applied for transportation, Minister of Transportation, or whether we were turned down.
Through Minister NTO, we were declined out of the
We were
request.
declined. Okay. So I attended the open house on water and wastewater feasibility study, attended asset management and psychological safety pre-conference session and conference orientation. And then on the 19th, I attended the networking breakfast for women with the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. Attended the plenary session with the Lieutenant Governor, Premier Ford, and Women's Forum. Met with the Minister of Seniors Affairs and provided information on the ferry situation, which we have over 700 seniors here on the island. Caucus lunch with the rural on the Ontario Medical Association, attended plenary session with Merrick Stiles, official opposition leader, as well as Bonnie Crombie, the leader of the Ontario Liberals at the plenary. Attended community safety and well-being plans, met with Indigenous Action Group drop-in, and on August 20th had an insight breakfast with planning in the public interest in navigating new planning framework. Attended information sessions on enhanced long-term financial stability. Attended the plenary program, importance of fiscal sustainable municipalities and partnering with Thrive local workforce and economic development. And a learning lunch on 90% diversion from landfills. And also met with Merrick Stiles, leader of the opposition and affordable housing, as well as program for municipal workforce redevelopment, known as reimagining, that included Sylvia Jones, the Minister of Health, Kinga Sumera, the infrastructure, Paul Calandra, Minister of Municipal Affairs. And they were all updated on the ferry issues, as well as the Minister of Transportation. I caught up with Ken. And was at that time that it was pointed out by the Minister of Transportation that our council had been supportive of the 80-minute ferry. I said, is that right? So there will be a motion that's coming up later on to try to get some clarity on that. I also attended the Clearwater networking event, brings communities together along the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River, and on August 21st, the breakfast for Renewal Canada Community Building Funds, which is the gas tax, plenary session on housing, thinking differently with infrastructure. Met with the Honorable Kinga Sumera, the Minister of Infrastructure, regarding 50 kilometers of highways that were downloaded to us and ongoing costs of upkeep versus $108,000 of the gas tax, which I asked her specifically for some support for Highway Road 95, as is directing tourism, linking the road not only to the USA, but to the waterfront trail, but also widening for farm equipment as well as cyclists. And she provided me an email connection map that we can find out if we can qualify for a few things. She was very supportive in that. And pointed out that she had remembered me from the Mimikyu forum where I got to ask a question. And we had an interesting discussion on the moves that the Ministry of Health is making right now. I also had a brief discussion with Minister Lecce, the Minister of Energy and Government, House Leader Steve Clark, and the Minister of Rural Affairs, and that. All in all, much was shared and learned and made a lot of supporters in that. And the new president of AMO understands this very issue very well. And she had been the former president of Roma, the rural Ontario, so we're well positioned to have a larger group help us. In the future, I'd like to see more counselors and the CAO come and attend, and that there's only so much that I can do at the conference, but I do pack in quite a bit, but it would be better if we could expand this information and the networking opportunities and training that is provided there. And the money is well worth it for the expenses, and have any question regarding the process, and that for the mayor's expense is what should be an automatic, and how I could possibly do the delegation without ever attending there. It is not even reasonable, and the county should not have to pick up the expenses all the time, especially when I'm primarily there. That for the infrastructure delegation and for the Ministry of Health that they've gone forward. So I think these expenses should be automatically approved and then part of the expense budget of the mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I could just kind of respond just on the process. So when the request came through, there was a bit of this misunderstanding for me. I had thought you were approved by county. I found out after the fact that as a counselor, you have an expense account that's approved in your budget, which you can use at your discretion. So they don't necessarily, say approve you to go to a conference, but if you have room in that expense account, you could claim it. So when I was told that the hotel was coming through the county, again, I was just kind of looking for clarification what they were reimbursing. So I do have a bit more clarification there. As far as the budget, again, there are room available. And I believe it is the council's preference, and I'll let the other councilors speak, that we have room in the budget, but there are certain events that it would still get approved on attendance. Again, they're not mean to make the process more difficult. I was just kind of making sure, again, that everything's approved. So, like I said in my report, there is room in the budget. That wasn't, an issue for not accepting the expense reimbursement at the time. It's just making sure, again, following proper approval procedures. Even from a staff perspective, right, we have approval for conferences, but if I were to attend one, I'd have to get the CAO's permission. Even if there is room in the budget, for staff to attend the conference, so. That's just being the approval process there, that's kind of just the facts as I saw it. But yeah, if you have any comments or questions, or, if you think there should be changes to the process where. If we change it to as the county does it, where it's expense accounts and you can claim reimbursement. I just don't believe that is our current setup, but like you said, if it was how the county did it, you would have kind of your discretion to, when you've incurred costs on behalf of the township, claim it.
Because as it was, I had to provide my visa and that for the registration, because it was under a social pass, I wouldn't have even been able to vote. And that was not appropriate in that, so by doing it as registration, mayor becomes under my title instead of councillor.
Yeah.
And Roma was completely paid for by the county. So in the past, historically, the county and the township had basically alternated in picking up the expenses and that for those that were involved in that. So I think it's more than reasonable that this gets flowed through. And when we didn't have a budget set, when this came out, the county jumped on it, and I'm very appreciative because I have a decent hotel room at the site. And that, so, yes, I think we need to look at the process because it should be an expensive, it shouldn't come through council.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, there would be efficiencies to that. That would make it.
And even stationery and things of that nature that I have to purchase and that usually end up flowing it through county just because of the nature of, but really in fairness, it should be divided down and that, and it should be a reasonable expense. Okay? So we have to have a motion to approve my expenses, you're saying.
We do, so I'm looking for a mover and seconder for that motion. That would be finance report FN 009-24, the 2024 AMO conference expense reimbursement be received, and that council reviews the expenditure and budget available and direct staff accordingly. So if there's any questions there. Other.
Okay, Councilor DeBlancy?
Yeah, I'm not forgetting, so I thought we discussed at the start of the year and last year, well, let me use junkets that people go on when people are in their own pocket. We just got a great report back from a bunch of people saying we're on course. Let's try to keep it there, so I can't in good heart, not saying you didn't have a busy schedule, Madam Mayor, but we all agreed, we're not paying for these trips away, we're doing it, so we're doing it our own pockets. That wouldn't be agreed upon, so I don't know, in good faith, I can't accept this. I'm sorry.
Treasurer, I believe you were present for the budget discussion earlier,
But-
or
and-
the current year.
Yeah.
Yes, and was there not a line expense of 3,500 set aside for the mayor?
In the budget, yes, there was set aside for council, as far as where I missed the original conversation, but I believe as a detail item. Listed for mayor to attend conferences. And I guess clarification on that, with that money set aside just for the mayor, not other councilors, I wasn't completely 100% sure if that was just your allocation or.
Then the other councilors had declined that they wanted to attend any conferences and they didn't want to have a budget for it. And I made it quite clear that it is necessary for the mayor.
No.
Councilor Baldwin.
No, that's not the way it is. It didn't decline. I thought we fully agreed because we were looking at a fairly substantial tax increase that we would cut where we could. If there was 3,500 left in, it was for everybody. No, I did not say that I did not want to attend. As a matter of fact, I did attend Good Roads and paid for it out of my pocket. My feeling is I don't even know how much I get a month, but I didn't know I was getting paid, so I feel that I can use that money that comes from council to pay for conferences as needed. And I mean, you would be in a situation where you make almost 3 times between here and the county what I do, so there's plenty of money there that comes from the township and the county can be paying for these. That's my opinion.
Councilor Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to, I am gonna sound like a broken record here. When we were first elected, the first budget meeting we had, I know I went on record as saying our finances are not in good shape. We need to be very controlled in where we spend our money, and I made the statement that I believe council has an obligation to set a standard. That's where I started, that's where I am today, and that we need to be very prudent and get approval for anything that we choose to spend money on. I fully support the comments the other 2 councilors made, which is we had a detailed conversation about this, and the agreement was, if you want to go to a conference, if any council wants to go to a conference, you pay for your own pocket, and Councilor Hall was the first one to do that. So, I don't support covering the cost. I think we need to stick with what we said.
Okay, Councilor Ackland.
Again, I don't believe just because we have a budget of $3,500, we need to load the budget of $3,500 or say we had 10,000. Just because we have money doesn't mean we need to go to everything. We need to go to the right things. We need to look for funding. We need to get help from other communities and the governments and whatever else that could help us. you obviously listed off all these events you went in one day, and I'm like, I just look at one day's thing, and I'm like, if you got to talk all these people for 2 minutes, they probably wouldn't remember who you are anyway. Well, they might remember who you are, but anyway. At the end of the day, did you get any benefit back from all this stuff? You went for 3 days. Did we get any benefit as townships? From like, are we gonna get some funding, or do you felt that you moved forward on our ferry services for not just Wolf Island? I hear you talk about it all the time, but how on?
We didn't get accepted as a Ministry of Transportation delegation.
So all these other delegations for. What did you move forward on from them? Like water,
From
sewer,
infrastructure?
yeah, infrastructure.
Okay, we have a very specific ask in that, and we now have the connection to infrastructure in that, because they recognize that this was an avenue of funding that they're warm to. There is this is how you get the criteria and the dates for when the funding is coming. As a matter of fact, I have a few other funding pieces. You seem to question the value of AMO and Roma, which is the Rural Association of Municipalities and the Association of Municipalities, and that for conferences. You're in a distinct minority in this opinion, that's why they are well attended in that, and there's exceptional training and opportunity for networking and moving to a higher level. That's why I would encourage other members of this council, as well as the CAO, to attend at least Roma or AMO on a regular basis in that, because the information that's brought back is very good. And I have sat down with the CAO and it just adds to the professionalism and elevation of scrutiny that we can obtain, and that, as well as the networking connections. And that, so for example, when there was an obstruction or a time delay very recently on a project that wanted to make use of Big Sandy Bay, and the person involved reached out to me, I could reach out directly to people that I've talked to, and we got permission granted in record time, as in we're expecting a written letter today, and that was Thursday, that I was moving to an issue. So that's the sort of advantage you get when you have face-to-face connections with people. And with the ministry, this is the only time that you get to have an opportunity to sit with the minister or the parliamentary assistant or the deputy minister or the premier when you catch them in the hallway too. So it's really a wonderful opportunity, especially for small little communities like us, to have that opportunity. And to deny it was very, very unfortunate. Councillor Saunders.
Remember, I don't disagree with you. I think the message is not this year, when our finances are in better shape, when we're better equipped to understand where we're going, what the training requirements are, what our future strategic initiatives are, we'd be better positioned to spend the money. I'm in complete agreement with Councillor Ackley. I've seen too many government run organizations, whatever you want to call them, where you hear the statement, well, there's money left in the budget, so we better spend it. I'm very much in the camp of, if there's money left over, perfect, goes in reserves, move to next year, but don't just spend it because it's there. And I think council is very clear. We're not doing conferences this year. If you want to do it, you're on your own dime. So
Okay, and I will make the point that it is already in this budget for this year under the mayor's expenses. And if council does not support this, I view it as a financial abuse of the mayor, and I will be taking action on it. I work in good faith and I work very hard for the community, and that is a line in the budget. And if you're denying that you didn't vote, I will be taking action. It is limiting to my role of speaking to government and representing us in proper forms. And it is unreasonable to expect me to pay out of my pocket to attend an AMO or Roma conference. There'll be one more round of this, and then I'm going to stop the discussion.
Should,
Councillor Hall.
okay, we do have a specific line that says mayor's expense only? No. Okay, that we need to have straight. And then there would be a process that these would be approved prior to attending. I would think would be the process that you would get approved prior to. Everything we do, we approve prior to spending money, so I think it would be best. So I don't think that practice was followed. I think, if there's another one comes up, and if there is money there, it needs to become before council, and everybody needs to speak to it and approve it there. So I'm still not in favor of this.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just for me to answer, as far as the mayor's budget, I can look right now, I have to check. When looking at the conferences, I'd be looking at the council department and we have 3,500, just because usually that's not been a line item I'd be breaking down. While we discuss, I can see if it says the mayor. Like I said, as far as standard and procedure, I think that's where, again, there was kind of gray area, our original emails for clarification. I can confirm if it says mayor or not. I think if there needs to be discussion though, if it's still approved, even if it says, you know, mayor's 3,500. Does that mean you can, you know, attend which conferences you want? Does the mayor have the discretion? Because regardless, if it says mayor, I'm just unsure if it's set up as a discretionary fund where you can use up to that amount, or if it's a fund that needs council approval, which I think, again, is kind of the crux of the issue today. So I'll let questions, I'm gonna double check. So within the budget, and again, I was at the earlier meetings, usually you have each line item like training, owners, expense. Sometimes things are broken down underneath, not everything. So I'm gonna just check and verify that just so councilors, you know, have fine information. But once we get back again, maybe it's kind of a hole we need to clarify, you know, again, like I said, there's budget for administration staff to attend a conference, but I wouldn't be able just to go attend a conference, you know, without the CAO's approval before going. So just because it's in the budget doesn't mean it's necessarily really used to staff, so if that all makes sense with the point I'm trying to make, but I'm just gonna double check quickly, just on the mayor's item, just so everyone has full information.
And then going back to the infrastructure delegation, and up until the Friday, we had the Ministry of Health delegation. I was the delegator to do the presentation. So it behooves us to actually have me there, since it's not done by Zoom. So, as I said, I view this as a financial abuse. And I will be delving further into it if this is not approved, not there's a line expense for my expenses. There's an expectation that we actually have representations at these conferences, especially when we have a delegation, but at any point in time, and it should be used as a learning tool, which I've always viewed it as. Councillor Saunders.
Madam Mayor, I'm curious as to your comment about you're gonna seek legal action. Can you,
No, I'm gonna follow up on this, and probably with municipal affairs first, and yes, there may be other complaints and that, because this, I view it as financial abuse.
okay, so abuse is a pretty strong word.
Yes, it is.
So I guess I'm looking for there. Are you suggesting that council is abusing you, or individual members of council are abusing you, or what are you?
I'll be discussing it further.
Okay, but you are on the record and saying you are going to follow up on what you believe is an abuse.
Yes. A financial abuse of my position. And that, one of the things within the municipal act and that are the responsibilities and roles of the mayor, including representation. And yet if there is no financial support coming from council for that role, there's been cases already decided on that, so let's just look at this.
We'll leave that to take action, yes.
Madam Mayor, may I suggest a 5-minute break while our treasurer looks up that information?
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay, yeah, hold on a second, this happened.
11:39, we'll resume at 11:45.
We put a starter on that. Sure, they didn't need to start. So something battery.
Ignition switch.
No.
On,
Yeah.
so, they.
Did they have one? It's just a 3-wire switch, isn't it?
Yeah, so Dan will bring them, Dan Emerson, who does the maintenance, he can bring them up halfway and Pat crosses it to get her started and away they went.
Yeah. I have a whole bunch of them.
What's that?
I have a whole bunch of them.
Oh, do you? And they're actually doing a great job. They're
Yeah.
building their inventory. Those on.
Good stuff, all right, yeah. Start cylinder, starter, all
Yeah.
belts.
Yeah, Liam went in, Liam went in and just hit the key and it's nothing, so.
Yeah,
Never,
it's a diesel though, so you gotta,
they actually washed it and cleaned it over the weekend and lost the keys. I'm teasing him, I'm just kidding. No.
Report, update, the keys
Yeah.
are found
You found them?
in the cup holder in my truck.
Ready to tell where you put them?
over there in your truck.
Yeah,
Never seen my truck.
it never fails, it's like any other piece of equipment though, there's no rhyme or reason, it was working great till midnight last night.
Yeah,
They shut it off, the guy goes home, they go to start it, done.
there's nothing you can do, right?
Yeah. But, again, they were on it quickly, so that's good. Not the rush hour people out of there.
We should just give them a little jumper wire next time. Cause once it's on, it's on. They don't shut off. Right? Right, put the key in the on position.
Right.
And you jump 2 wires in and go. Diesel, right? So it doesn't.
Yeah, and I can be honest, that they're simplifying. that
Yeah.
A little more, but they put all this high tech,
Yep.
fancy stuff on there.
Yep,
It's,
hard to beat it.
it's crazy, go back. It's the same as in that snowplow, it
Yep.
looked like something out of NASA.
Yep.
Honest to God, all these touch screens and this and that, and I said, that's simple.
It's just not brakes.
Yeah,
It's a salt machine,
yeah,
right? It's gonna break.
yeah, it's amazing.
It's like our big boat with the 30 skids of salt they pour on it every year.
But that's, yeah.
This boat's got a heated deck, doesn't it?
This one?
Well, the batteries are on fire in this time anyway. Did I say that? I'm sorry. I don't know. Yeah. You only have to have your heat on, if that's beats the floor, what's that?
It's not designed.
It's like, data collection is really important, and the trick sheets and things like that that we do. But it's how we do that. So when it's literally a time for it, and you have a worker who's in and out of the operating room, soaking wet. Yep, a touch screen is not a good approach to it. Good old paper, and we can transfer it, we can do that later, but
Judy probably doesn't even know, we got cameras going on our boat.
that's.
Did you know that?
The cameras coming on.
Sorry, putting cameras, I think, every next week
On the joint bubble,
on our big boat, yeah,
really? For what reason?
for personnel reasons.
Really good.
Good. Well, just so they know that it's not the residents, it's could be the other people too. Goes 2 ways. Hopefully put one in the cabin, and then we'll be driving. Watched Liam yesterday, 2 days ago, pull in, oh, sorry, watch somebody pull in on the cell phone. Not me.
Well, there's a safety note on our extended ferry for all to review and sign.
Yeah,
And it's about, this is a hands-free, fellas and ladies, and you put it down, you do not have to put the back of the plan on your cell phone.
yeah, but it's yours, yeah, because one person that could be very dangerous. Even if it's bad. Yeah, you got your break time, you got your whatever, call your friend, but they have 2 carry-on cell phones now. And then they got 12 radios, 5 of them are sitting in their thing on all the time, I'm like, why do you got 5 radios? They don't even use them, they're sitting in the thing.
That's crazy.
A waste of money.
Well, a portable radio like that, good quality portable radios, but I could use 6 in the car.
Council is Zoom, we're at the finance report regarding the annual conference expense.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So thanks for providing that recess just to look into it. So under the council department budget, if you look at conference expenses, it was broken down as a line item. It just says mayor and there's $3,500. So again, for council making a decision, I will note that some of the money has been used, for the, for Roma, there were per diems that the mayor claimed. So I think the county funded part of that one. I think earlier you said the county funded it, but there was some expense claims there. So again, money has been set aside for it. I do think the way we currently set up our expenses, that if a staff or a council is attending a conference, usually there is prior approval. With that being said, you know, there's AMO, there's many different conferences, you know, a mayor or council could attend. And I think speaking on that, just with this process as well, as we have it right now, it is, you know, council still approves. It's not set up as a discretionary fund. Again, that could be something, you know, we have spent quite a bit of time discussing it today. It might be worthwhile looking at that to, you know, develop set procedures. So again, if a member of council, whether it be the mayor or any of the councilors, attend a conference, if they have a discretionary fund, and as long as what they're doing is for the benefit of the township, they would be able to claim. From my perspective, I don't believe that process has been set in place. The $3,500 again is set aside for the mayor, but I would believe that, you know, attendance would be approved beforehand. So high level, you know, the mayor, I think we can say, you know, it did attend the conference and there's room in the budget. It's just, you know, council would have to decide on it. So if that's all fair, I know I've talked a few times. I don't know, Mayor Greenwood Spears, if you would, you know, like to comment on my comments there. But
Yes, yes, I think discretionary budget has always been the historic practice of. And it was skipped over in the very first year that we took on because of the massive deficit that was going on, and the county fortunately bore the brunt. That being said, the previous CEO had signed up for Roma, and that for myself, herself, and the former public works person. And that, so that was put back into the budget in that, for that period of time. Moving forward in that, the responsibility of the mayor of the township, and that needs to be financially supported in that for attending these conferences. There is a tangible and intangible benefit of it. And it came out in full display just in this past few days. And that's how, especially small communities, make good use of their networking skills during that time frame. Because we aren't Toronto, we aren't Ottawa. But we can get the ear of ministers and their parliamentary assistants. So I encouraged at the time when we were discussing the monies and that, I said the councillors should consider attending at least one of those two conferences on a routine basis, as well as the CAO and that, and quite frankly, you know, treasurer, there's information there. And while I can glean as much as I can from it, and I'm sure if you had sat in on the financial stability aspect of municipality, she probably would have gleaned a lot more, but I did take a lot of notes. And that's so, I hope councilors rethought their position and approves this. And moving forward, I think it should be a discretionary piece, because it's part of the vote, and it shouldn't be coming out of my pocket. And there's no one else that could do the delegation for infrastructure, and no one else even wanted to go to the meeting apparently. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, me?
Actually, I'm thinking of it, because I already said we're coming to the end of it, but since we got fresh information from the treasurer, yes.
Okay. To start with what you just mentioned there, I would be glad to attend out of my own pocket and present the delegation. That is an issue. I think it sounds like there's still needs to be some clarity on this. I would suggest a compromise that we defer this till the October meeting and we can have more information. Will you be in agreement to that?
What more information are you seeking? It's a done deal, it's, the report is in, the expense has been incurred.
Okay, based on the meeting, I'll vote on basically on the information I have today then.
I need to move on seconder, sorry to put it on the floor now. Okay.
Sorry.
I need a mover and seconder to put the motion on the floor in order to be able to vote on it.
Am I allowed to move it? I can move it.
Do I have a seconder? Seconder, do I have a seconder? Sorry, or the motion's on.
Then I would, be of the position that by default in that, I have an expense account and should be paid. And that, but that's my position on that. And we have to have some legal involvement on this, then it's going to be. Thank you very much. Now, action required items. Township of Emo resolution support request, new provincial municipal fiscal framework.
Moved by Councillor Ackley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Saunders, that the request received from the Township of Emo regarding requesting the province of Ontario to commit to undertaking with the Emo a comprehensive social and economic prosperity review to promote the stability and sustainability of municipal finances across Ontario be received and filed, or would council like to endorse it?
Councillor Jablonski,
I would endorse that.
Councillor Holton,
I would endorse that.
Councillor Saunders,
If I could, Madam Mayor, how did these get on the agenda as being action items?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So municipalities will send resolutions to, they can do it a variety of different ways, but they can send it through Association of Municipalities of Ontario to distribute to all municipalities in Ontario, or they can send it directly to municipalities, at which time then the municipality would place it on one of our council meetings, whether we wish to support their resolution or, again, it's.
So, thank you. I'm trying to understand how that's different than an information item that comes through.
Because this is an action required that they're seeking our support.
Thank you. I support that.
You're welcome.
Councillor Ackley,
All those in favor?
motion carried. Okay, and 6.2, Township of Emo resolution support request operational budget funding.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Saunders, second by Councillor Holton, that the request received from the Township of Emo regarding requesting the province of Ontario to treat all municipalities fairly and provide equivalent representative operational budget funding amounts to all Ontario municipalities be received and filed, or would council like to endorse it?
Councillor Jablonski. Councillor Holton,
I'm in favor of endorsing.
Councillor Saunders,
Endorse.
Councillor Ackley. Yeah, we can endorse.
All those in favor? Motion is carried.
City of Belleville resolution support request family doctors.
Moved by Councillor Ackley, second by Councillor Jablonski, that the request received from the city of Belleville regarding requesting the province of Ontario take immediate action to ensure family physicians and lessening the administrative burden all family doctors face with managing practices be received and filed, or would council like to endorse it?
Councillor Jablonski,
Strongly endorse.
Counselor Holton,
Oh,
Counselor Saunders.
As well.
Counselor Ackley. As well.
All those in favor? Motion carried.
Township of Tecumseh, resolution to support request phasing out streams water testing for private wells.
Moved by Councillor Halton, seconded by Councillor Tulowiecki, that the request received from the Township of New Tecumseh regarding requesting the province reconsider and ultimately decide against the proposed phasing out of free private drinking water testing services be received and filed, or would council like to endorse?
Counselor Tulowiecki,
I would say 5.
Counselor Holton,
I would endorse this.
Counselor Saunders,
Endorse it.
Counselor Ackley.
Endorse it.
Can I make it?
I can endorse it, but I can also say that they've already reversed that there will be maintained free water testing, and that I've heard that directly from the ministry. That, at the conference, actually.
Thank you.
So-
All those in favor? Motion carried.
Okay, now we have the public question period, and there you have 2 minutes to ask of any counselors, Matt. Any questions related to anything that's been on the agenda or on the agenda at all? If you have a question, please step forward, state your name and specify your question.
I just have a question to everyone.
Your name
My name is Logan Ross,
and location. Sorry, sure.
we're 39 Waldo's Way,
I'm sorry, say that again?
39 Waldo's Way.
All right.
My question is more to everybody about the, I guess this fight over going to, these different meetings. I'm wondering mainly is, we already talked with a few other councilors on the phone, they probably remember me, asking some questions about everybody getting along. And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing and seeing, that nobody really is getting along between the mayor and the councilors. The councilors on one side and the mayor's on the other side. I would just kind of like to know if everybody's separated and nobody is agreeing to do anything to maybe improve the community. Is this a functioning,
You wish to go over the finance piece.
right, is this functioning properly the way it should be? Because if everybody's against each other, then how are we gonna get better as a community? I guess it's everybody.
Hey, Councilor Charlie.
No, it's an interesting observation. I wouldn't say we're all fighting. We do disagree amongst ourselves, but I think we do agree more often than disagree. Just because things aren't being mentioned in council meetings doesn't mean there's a lot going on in the background. Numerous committees, EMS committees going forward. We have a lot of things still to go. It's just not part of the council agenda to actually go through that stuff. A lot of stuff is a little bit sensitive too, but to say we're not all getting along, I don't think it's a fair statement. Yeah, maybe some deception, maybe some problem between councils, mayor and stuff, but I think overall, we all have the same ideas in mind. We want to try to improve our community. So sometimes it may be cat and dogs getting there, sometimes maybe we'll sing kumbaya, but we're gonna try to get somewhere at the end of this and make some changes, but yeah, appearances can be deceiving sometimes.
And
Councilor.
And I also agree that, like, we are getting along, we have some money in the bank, so we've already moved from previous council where we were broke and way behind to forward, and we're doing great things. Buying new equipment for the fire departments, building our infrastructure up here. Yes, we do have an 80-minute boat. Do I agree with that? No. Can we fix it right now? No, we can't fix it because they aren't done building yet. We will hope when they're done building that it will get better by 15 or 20 minutes due to the fact that they're trying to plan a lighting situation and a direction off and a direction on the boat. And even over here, maybe make some things a little bit better. You know, should there have been a big parking lot? Sure, there should have been a big parking lot there. Totally believe it. but I wasn't here for that deal. We are making things better, and again, if we did agree on everything, there's no use having a council.
Sure.
Because we need to be separated on some stuff. Some people, let me finish. Some people are making it sound like other councilors hate each other or hate somebody else or something. It's not that. We all have an opinion on something and we just want to make our opinion important. Like the mayor speaks all the time, trying to focus on her things and we focus on our things, and we gotta meet in the middle somewhere, and we usually do. So,
So can I just say one more thing?
yeah, go ahead.
I work on the road, and I get paid to stay in a hotel. I totally understand, my company doesn't pay me to stay in a hotel for frivolous things. If
Yeah.
the job, you go to the job, I can't go to another town and be like, oh, there's a bunch, much nicer stuff over there, there's a much better hotel where I can get like a better hotel and not have to stay in a hotel full of crackheads. But sometimes that's what you have to put up with, because the company won't pay that. But I mean, I see that, I mean, if the mayor wants to go and do something to support the community or even branch out networking, it sounds like everybody's against that and doesn't wanna, put any money towards that.
So my biggest issue with this is we need to respect the process. So the process is that we as a council, as a whole, are the governing body, and we make a decision. We're 5 individuals with 5 different ideas. So it's not my individual thought, it is council as a whole's decision. So these things we need to respect the process, and we need to come to council and we need to approve things before we go and do it. We need to speak with one voice, we need to have, so whatever the decision of council is, regardless of what my personal feelings are, I need to respect the decision of the council. So this is more a process than anything.
Okay, and my 2 cents on this is you've seen it in full display today. The discussion regarding submitting delegation requests at AMO was done with the position that if you get a request, you'd obviously be presenting to the minister. And we had 2, and then one got canceled and that, but AMO and Roma are 2 key meetings for networking and education, and quite frankly, wonderful training opportunities, man, and especially for a new council. I would encourage everyone to attend because there's a lot to be learned. And the financial abuse position, I view this as, because it should not have to come out of my pocket to do the business of the township. And certainly that's what I'm doing there, as well as enhancing my ability to get the businesses done in the township. So thank you for the question. And you have seen it on full display today.
Well, I would like to also say that, like, I mean, I do agree in some of the things, like, there are some things that, I mean, if there are some things that are frivolous or the counselors don't see as perfect for the community, I think it should be on a vote towards everybody. But at the same time, there should be things that if it is good for the community, then it should be covered. And I don't go my way, they do that, they do my, no, they burn off, so.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Thomas.
I want to clarify something. I don't agree, I, as a council, do not feel that these conferences are frivolous. The issue here, as Councilor Holden said, is process. We have some money in the budget. Did it get approved as a budget? Yes. Was the request to go approved by council? No. So let's follow process, okay? And when we don't follow process, we get into situations where there's disagreement. And I, for one, don't think they're frivolous. I think it's a matter of how much we can take on, when we're ready to take those. Do we have a plan of which councils are gonna go to which conferences? What's the objective? What do you want to come back with? When we have that all in place, then we'd be in a better position to effectively spend your tax dollars. So.
Step forward, state your name and location, please.
I'm Angela McCauley, and I'm also at 39 Wallowsway Lane. And I am just curious, are we able to know exactly like how much is this expense that we're bickering over? Is it a $100 bill? Is it a $2,000 bill? Is it?
100?
1 second, my computer went asleep, I'm just gonna open report.
It includes per diem, registration, gas. I did not bill for any meals, because usually there's snacks around the place. I did not go to the soiree, an additional soiree that you could sign up for. I didn't go to that. And that, so I was there as a working person.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So the total cost was $2,397.90. With regards to meals, the counselors get a per diem of $75 today, so I believe that was part of your question. You
I
requested.
did not put in requesting for meals.
Okay, so your per diem would just be the $150 a day for the conference. Okay. That miscommunication is so that $2,397 less $75 for 4 days, the meals that I guess the mayor was not claiming. And again, like she said, the hotel was paid for by the county, which again, added to kind of confusing some of the discussion because the mayor has an account with the county where she can claim these expenses. That's also, I think, one of the reasons why the approval and the process is important. Just because if, a cost is being reimbursed by the county, we would, as a township, need that clarified just to make sure that those costs are only reimbursed once. And just to clarify, make crystal clear, the mayor did not submit expenses twice to both. She submitted the hotel to the county, and their expenses to us, there was no repeat. But again, that just leads to the process to make sure, what reimbursement measures are available and kind of follow through in the process is done correctly. But yeah, so just in total, just to echo the mayor, there was the per diem of $150 per day to attend the conference. There was parking, and then there was a conference registration fee, which made up that amount.
Also, my next question was, I had seen something from Ted, I can't pronounce his last name. About the NPO is going to be reconsidering the break. Is there any official word on if they're going to be consulting or changing things or no? No, okay.
There's been no communication directly to the township on that regard unless the clerk has information. No, and that, from my perspective, that's an operational issue. It was, fairly arbitrary in that the time required for reducing the 7 nipples, I've been told, is 1 minute. And that's from the staff that are doing it. And a small amount of time for the actual ramp that's on the boat that does need to be done when it's stationary and that. And again,
I'm mostly talking about the 2-hour break.
that's that was part of the reason for the 2-hour break, as well as the pump outs. And that twice they've been observed pumping out during the boat trip, which has been past practice. So again, we seem to be red herrings for this 2-hour break and that, but that should be, that's an operational time frame. It should not actually require ministry as a minister level on that. And hopefully it will get resolved in that. I questioned it from the very first time I saw it. I actually thought it was a typo on their schedule and asked them, did you not know how to add 100, an hour and 20 minutes here and that, and they never even responded to anybody that questioned it until finally a week later. And I'll tell you, the minister was not aware of a 2-hour layover when I pointed it out to him. So I think that it potentially doable for being changed, whether it has to involve the ministry, that's one thing, but honestly, I think it's an operational thing, and quite frankly, it would be a small victory. It's not the biggest piece that is out there.
Okay, and my final question just comes regarding the timing of the council meeting. Are council meetings usually held during weekdays at this time? Where I've lived past, they've been in evenings.
That's true, you, Madam Mayor. So we held I prepared a report, presented it to council on a couple of different occasions, but I believe the last one was in February of this year, changing it from 4 p.m. on the second Monday of the month to 10 a.m. And then it's alternated between the two ones.
People might not be able to make their council meeting, because most people would be at work at 10 a.m. on Mondays.
Just 1 second, that you were keeping track of how many people were attending, because we were cognizant that we didn't want to have a decrease in the public.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, so, our numbers are still remain high, usually anywhere from, I'm gonna say 15 to 25 people normally attend. The majority are online, that is correct, and even prior to, us changing from 4 PM to 10 AM, the majority of people still, signed up online.
So this would be a live stream, like we would have attended virtually?
Yes.
Oh,
Right now,
okay. That's all the questions they need.
anybody online that has a question?
I don't see any else.
Okay, seeing none then,
Well,
nope, please step forward and state your name and location, please.
My name is Martin Monster, I live at 2899 Line Road. I'm not sure if I'm jumping the gun here, unfortunately, I was not able to listen to the report on the August survey from the mayor. That was the previous agenda item, so it would have been interesting to hear that. This draft motion, 9.1, tell me if I'm done, but if it is passed in any amended or original form, would it possibly be the intent of the council to then also get the support of the county? And or perhaps even the city of Kingston, but just curious. You can tell me if this is completely impossible to answer.
No, it's not impossible. If it gets passed and that, then we usually flip it over to the county. It's introduced to get their support for it.
Okay.
Mayor Brian Patterson has been very supportive all the way along. It wouldn't be a problem. And that to flip it over to the Kingston Council on that, I'm sure we find a welcome support because they have their concerns as well.
Okay,
And
thank you.
that, but whether or not this motion, gets a second or even is up for grabs.
Okay.
And it certainly is a draft motion. As to my report, that, as I indicated earlier, that you were probably missing, we did a consent agenda. I didn't realize that the information items were also included with the minutes. And that, because I did want to pull it out, but I do have a copy of my full report, and I definitely have a copy.
Well, I can read it online, thanks.
Yeah, and on the secondary note, today I'm doing a second survey. And I started at 5 o'clock this morning with the people commuting out, and I'll be continuing it on and off during the course of the day. I call them a pulse, because it's my own attempt to not have, toxic responses. It's in writing, it's verifiable. They just put their locator's address down in their initials, and they give me their opinion on that, and that helps me to know the feeling of the community. And that, because many people are the silent majority and they don't want to speak up online, they don't want to speak up even at a public meeting, but you give them a piece of paper, they can do that. And I had over 150 completed this morning so far, and God willing, I may have another 100. So I'll be sharing that information as well.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for clarification, the motion you're referring to is in the agenda, is giving notice of motion, is that what we're referring to?
It's, no, it's, item 9.1, the draft motion regarding the Wolfhound report and the Wolfhound discretion.
That's giving,
That's a notice.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. So the motion's not coming forward. She's giving notice to council
So
that at the October 15th council meeting, she will be bringing forward that motion.
Yeah, if I could just give one comment, just like everyone else, we are affected. We are, we work on Kingston side, some of us, we do lots of activities on the Kingston side, and especially the evening break, affects a lot. So we would be home after midnight. So.
so Madam Mayor, I can finish my comment. So thank you for bringing it up. I believe my reading of the response to the MVP you had was that NPO is willing to discuss it, That was how I read it. So the answer is they haven't got back to us. But, I think it's something that's open for discussion, where the 2 hour break is, not to be, short or whatever, right? So I believe that's what we had to, MP Shu's comments were. If I can go back to your comment earlier, I think, here's an example, the mayor's talked about examples. Here's an example, the mayor has gone out and conducted a survey without asking anybody, without informing, the council, and now we will get calls about what's this going on, so in fairness, I think a good way to start something like that is we're gonna do a survey, let council know, we're all prepared, maybe even have a comment on it. But taking action as an individual, like any of us, creates issues for all the rest of us.
Right, and we, can't deny and call, we got stories.
Can't speak at this point. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I just apologize. Can I get your last name, please? Mark?
Mosgert. It's on the sheet.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask one further question?
If you come forward.
Does anybody on council support this survey? Or is anybody gonna help with this survey, or is this like a city thing, a private thing?
What survey?
It's not an item on council at this point in time. But I will say that when I did want to do a survey on Howe Island on a specific issue, council actually voted against it. We've since had a lawyer involved in that, and he said, no, I can survey and communicate with residents at any point in time. And that we have not had a council meeting until now, after the ministry advised us on July 29th that the boat was going to start. And so I wanted to get that survey out there, the initial one, and now I'm doing one 3 weeks after it's been running to see how the pulse of the community is. And it is a Wolf Island based survey and that, so it is not meant to be comprehensive because I can't do it comprehensive, but certainly if this council had interest in doing a survey, it would be a worthwhile endeavor and it can be done more professionally and expansively. Councilor Ackland.
Again, you're throwing surveys out there when the boat infrastructure is not done, cannot run the speed. Like you said, the facilities used to be there for pumping, charging it, putting water in it. That stuff's not there right now, so they gotta move trucks in, takes longer. To move on, you've got a survey going out and it probably something about are you happy with the speeds and happy with this? Probably not.
Actually, I'm happy.
Nobody's happy.
Survey if you'd like.
So-
I have extra copies, but I have surveys for you.
Move on.
Extra copies of the report. Okay, so are we all done with the questions at this point? Thank you very much. Okay, statement by members. Now, Councilor Jablonski.
Actually, something a little lighter, good news. Get your dance fees ready, October 4th, dance party at the community center. It's gonna be all fundraiser for the recreation committee, so I can say by Wolf Island somehow. Come out and come to a community center dance again, October 4th. Little rally as well, little fundraiser and time to have some fun. Hope to see everybody there.
Okay, Councilor Holton.
So mine's a little bit longer. I'm gonna call it good, bad, and ugly. I will start with good. Family ball, huge success. Can't say enough about Gary Greenwood, who got the volunteer award, well deserved. You gotta remember, this guy's married, got kids, grandkids, works full time, his wife works full time. He travels to boat most every day, still spends a pile of time volunteering. And as the girls at a system called, his angels did a great job in helping him. And we just had many volunteers that show up, the ball diamond needed some repair. We had free sand, free equipment, stuff show up, and so that went off great. And I mean, as always, the township staff did an amazing job helping with registration, getting the grounds ready. Summer students, want to thank all the summer students for doing a great job, and big shout out to Lisa for keeping them in line and keeping everything running smoothly. Christina Walker, our silver medalist. She made us very proud. There was a few others associated with Wolf Island, but she's the only one that calls Wolf Island home. So, very proud of that. Like to thank our recreation committee again for organizing a viewing event at Sacred Heart School. And then, Bruce and Stella and their helpers put on an amazing, I'm gonna say, Christina Rocker Appreciation Day at the Community Center. That was great. We had a Canadian plowing match here. Thank the Posthumus family for hosting and all the volunteers. It was, they had a night in the village and it was amazing to see. It was great. Well done. The bad. We had some incidents past while on the island. I think it's pretty important for everybody to recognize, to try not to circulate rumors on social media and stuff that just may, I guess, scare the public. Try and be patient. We don't have any more information as a council than anybody else from the OPP, but try and be patient, check their website and see when you have updates from. And again, the firefighters are just amazing. I think it did, these incidents did highlight that we need to have an ambulance back on the island. But as Mike has stated, we have a citizens group that are experts in the field and they're working diligently to try and improve this. The ugly. So unfortunately, some misinformation that was not fact checked was circulated in the community on social media. It caused unnecessary discord in the community, and I'd like to clarify my response. I've lived here for 60 years. My wife and I commuted daily to work for 25, 30 years, raised our kids. We ran across that ferry a lot of times. I would never say that 80 minutes is preferred over 60 minutes scheduled. And I've never had the opportunity to talk to a minister or their assistant. So I just want that to be clarified. I believe we should be advocating with MDO, not alienating them. I'd like to really thank the people that reached out and actually talked to me, emailed me, phoned me, talked to me to find out what my position is. I really appreciate that. My door is open anytime. And what I heard from the community, we're hearing it again today. We need to have one clear voice. We need to have things fact checked before it's put out there. We need to have one clear voice, and I think the logical voice is our CAO. So that's my member statement. Thank you.
Councillor Saunders?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This just seems like it's Volunteer Appreciation Day. We've had a very busy summer as well with the Recreation Committee, and a big, I guess, step of the hat, as you used to say, to the folks who organized our annual end of summer barbecue, which included a fantastic fireworks display. Mike Hart took the lead on this. He's done it for, I think, 25 years. If you remember, we may have given him an award for that last year. Did a fabulous job. And in addition to that, so I want to let you know that the $2,500 that the council approved towards that event was augmented by another significant contribution by Councillor Ackley, and another significant contribution or donation by Mike Woodward, who's a citizen on the island. So in total, we had a really a phenomenal night, and it wouldn't have happened without all of Mike Hart's hard work and the significant contribution by Councillor Ackley and Mr. Woodward. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ackley?
Yeah, again, I'd just like to say, thanks to all our staff on the island, like Mike's doing a fabulous job. Looking after our ferry, looking after our fire department, looking after our roads, looking after us in general. As for the rest of the employees, they're doing a great job in getting the sides of the road cut, grading roads, doing the best of the ability we can with the money we have. Seems like our trucks are in tip-top shape and our equipment looks excellent, you know, with minimal amount wasted on, oh, we ran over this and blew a tire. It's our season's looking pretty good. We got a little bit of money in the bank, maybe. Hopefully, we're looking forward to next year that we can fix some roads.
The goal.
That's finished. Thank you.
Okay. And yes, the fun match was wonderful, and I'm so glad that the rain held off, that, and all the other exciting activities from pianists to baseball tournaments to everything, that's been a good summer in that regard. I wanted to bring attention to the tax sales that are being now on the website and there will be tax sales of properties when you're going through that financial statement, and that I assume all of those funds eventually will be applied to what is the knowing, correct? And they can be correction for us.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, due to the tax sale advertisements, we've already collected over $150,000. And it's expected probably that number will increase with the tax sale as well, so. Yes, that number will go down for 2024,
That'd be nice.
almost a guarantee.
That'd be nice. And regarding the second survey, as I said, that I started today, and that it is a pulse. I would encourage, of course, at any point in time, the council may want to survey the community in a fashion. I've asked for a survey to be set up regarding budgetary items, because we need to get our budget moving in a good fashion. And while behind the scenes, I know operationally, you guys are already working towards it from that perspective. We need to hear from the community so that they have their priorities mentioned and considered as well by council. Because social media has its limits, websites has its limits, but we're a small community. We can get the word out, but you need to have something concrete enough so that they can identify what categories and what divisions of funds they think are reasonable. I'm very pleased that this year we have a small surplus, especially given the deep deficit that we had landed in, and we need to make sure that we are working towards the goals of the residents as well. It's not just about standard operations, it's also listening to what we're missing or have been overlooking. And that's, so I want to see that consultation, and if not, you'll probably be seeing another mayor's survey go out, and that's because I'm going to be asking residents as to what it is if we haven't got something set up. Because it's important to me at least. Going back to funding opportunities and that, there are funding opportunities of 200 million for community sport and recreation that I found out from infrastructure and that, and for revitalizing existing structures as well as supporting new construction. So I think that that's something that we should be cognizant of for our budgets. There's also a call for proposal for prevention and addressing of gender-based violence, and that is October 11th final date on it. There's 20% funding available for rural for seniors active living programs from AMO. And there's also, well, there's actually quite a few envelopes of funding that. And as I said, when I was dealing with the Minister of Infrastructure, and that part of what we were passing today is sometimes the funds that the province announced don't apply to small municipalities. And so when I was dealing with the Minister of Infrastructure, she fully appreciated the 50 kilometers of road that were downloaded to our small municipality. And she was very receptive to seeing if we can work together in getting additional funding for the support of our roads and widening for tourism support as well as agriculture support by widening those roads. So that's the sort of stuff that can help us all the way along, literally the bottom line. It's not a guarantee, but the more we put our hand out with good proposals and make sure we aren't ambushed by the cutoff dates, the better it is. Okay.
Madam Mayor, is that good?
Yes.
Good talk here, comment. So you to the CEO. Vanessa, is there any process whereby you as a CEO receive these information about these various programs that are coming forward? Is that automatic, or do we have to go searching it out, or?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So we do receive different notifications, whether it be through the ministry itself or I'm not sure if council remembers last year, we joined up with Grant Match.
Yeah.
They send us notifications as well of upcoming funding opportunities, but again, with the small administrative staff we have and the number of tasks that we have to deal with, unfortunately, that's kind of one of the things that gets put to the back burner, which is unfortunate because in funding that we could get will definitely help us out. But with our new treasurer coming in this year, and working on, you know, year end and that kind of stuff. So going forward, it's certainly something that Jesse and I will be looking at.
So to clarify, so we have mechanisms to learn about these, whether it's a conference or you
Correct.
or whatever. It's right now, it's an issue of resources to
Correct.
financial and staff resources.
Correct.
Thank you.
Just for clarity, and that as head of council, and that I often get the notifications and I forward them on to the CEO. And that can be the federal or provincial grants and that, and there is a lot that the province expects small municipalities to take advantage of, but some are structurally not allowing small municipalities, so that's where that becomes a mention to this. Okay. So now on to notice of motion. Giving notice, because that's the process that we have in place. I will say other places have that you can get something brought in quicker and that if you have people in council in support. But at this point in time, I notice motions regarding the new 80-minute ferry schedule, the Wolf Island for 4, and the 2-hour layovers are part of the service and the negative impacts on residents, contractors for services and tourism. Whereas the previous ferry schedule was for the most part 1-hour service, and the new ferry is not capable of providing service in less than 80 minutes schedule at this time. And that there is a 2-hour layover built into the service between 2140 and 2340, which further delays transportation. And that MTO has not conducted an extensive survey of residents to assess the impact on their lives with the new slower schedule. And the premier has conducted a survey of nearly 300 residents and contractors who depend on the ferry, in which the results indicated 80% want 60-minute service to be provided over the new ferry's slower schedule. Be it resolved that the Council of Frontenac Islands formally requests that until the Wolf Island report is capable and able to provide the transportation in a 60-minute fashion, that the Wolf Islander 3 be brought back into service on the previous schedule and run from the Marysville dock. So whether I get a seconder for that in the future, we'll know by the next meeting. Councilors can think about it. But 80% of the islanders were very clear that the 80-minute impact on them affects them extremely negatively. And that's why I'm doing a resurvey today to find out if it's still that strong of a negative impact. And let the community know when I finish that. Councillor Holton.
I also have 2 notices of motion, just verbal. They both, I would say, kind of housekeeping items. One will be to approve the Sunday gun hunting within Frontenac Islands. That aligns us with the rest of the province. It's only a couple of places left that aren't. And just to approve the use of ATVs on our roads. That's a housekeeping item that we kind of missed.
Okay, any others? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to announcements. And I think while we've done the report that we suggested I put in there. With an announcement, council adjourned the closed session, unless there's anything else. Any other announcements?
Moved by Councillor Holton, second by Councillor Skolnick, that council adjourned to form council in closed session at 12:35 p.m. regarding the Municipal Act Section 239B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and Section 239E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, more specifically, potential litigation and a personnel matter.
All right, so thank you very much. It's a closed session now, so. Not there, I need to go on. Oh, okay, sorry about that. Can I have a mover and a seconder for close?
No, I have moved, I have seconded, I just
Need
need,
to vote.
Yeah.
All those in favor of moving to close,
You guys say thanks, enjoy.
council, all those in favor of moving to close?
motion carried, thank you.
Motion carried. Now. It- Okay, bylaw number 027-2024 pool bylaw.
So the motion I have, Madam Mayor, is for 3 readings and final passage for both bylaw 027 being the pool bylaw and 028 being the council staff relations policy. These were both brought to council for first and second reading at the July meeting. So moved by Deputy Mayor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Ackley, that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaw numbers 027-2024 and 028-2024 being the pool bylaw and council staff relations policy.
We'll go around the table to speak to that. Because as I pointed out, there seems to be a bit of a glitch in the staff relationship policy. So bylaw 2024,
No, 20.
001-24, sorry. Okay. Is there anyone else who wants to speak to that other than myself?
Madam Mayor, you mean 028-2024?
AD 00124, I believe that's what I'm looking at. Got the wrong one.
That's administration.
Council staff relations policy, it's titled at the top. Okay, 028 starts at the very beginning, 2024. Okay, sorry about that. I'm looking at the attachment, yes, for it. Attachment A. And that's where there seems to be a gap in, when the subject of the complaint may be the most senior administrative staff we have, CEO and clerk, and I think we should have that, identified, and that as a responsibility of either a lawyer or an outside independent investigator, and that when there's a complaint that's involved.
So then, Mayor, you to the clerk, are we not looking for a motion to approve these?
3 readings and final passage, we've already did first and second reading.
Yeah, a motion to do third reading?
But
That's
that's,
the motion.
that's the motion that's on the floor.
Okay.
Right, but she already cited who moved and seconded, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's on the floor.
Mayor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Ackley.
So it's on the floor, that's why we're up for discussion. And that's where I'm saying that there seems to be a gap in our appendix A, if we don't have a mechanism for when a complaint is made about the CAO or clerk. And that, if we had a clerk treasurer, it's covered, and that, but, not a CEO/clerk. So I think we need to have that amendment put in. And I would suggest that an impartial, third party that is qualified either from our legal counsel's department or an independent investigator be assigned to any complaints in that regard.
Do you motion to amend the bylaw?
Yes, obviously.
So someone has to.
I'd like to call for a vote on the original motion,
A second.
as stands, the original motion, call for a vote on it.
Is there a seconder for the amendment? Because the amendment gets voted on first, and then we go back to the original motion.
No second received.
No, no.
Main motion.
So we have a defective gap. It's unfortunate in this. So back to the main motion.
All those in favor? Motion carried. The next three bylaws are, the procedural under the section 270 of the municipal act, bylaw 29, 2024, establish accountability and transparency policy. 30, establish pregnancy and parental leave for council policy. 31, giving policy for the giving of public notice. And 36, 2024 communications policy. So I'm just looking for a first and second reading for those ones. Moved by Councillor Holton, seconded by Councillor Ackley, that first and second readings be granted to bylaws numbers 029-2024, 030-2024, 031-2024, and 036-2024.
Okay, any questions? Councilor Dubois?
Just the one thing, Madam Mayor, the 030-2024 establishing pregnancy. Just curious, how about 20 weeks, 26 weeks for pregnancy leave, like almost half a year? 20 weeks sounds a bit shy.
That's right out of the, yes.
Okay. Pardon, please, yes, okay.
Okay, Councillor Holton?
No questions.
Councillor Saunders?
Just had one, with implementation of this pregnancy leave, is there something you want to tell us?
It's council.
Oh,
And it's legislated through the municipal act, so.
no, thank you, no questions.
Councillor Ackley?
No questions.
Okay, I have a couple questions on the accountability and transparency piece. And that, regarding point 9 under 4, open government. Execute contracts with a value of $100,000 or more that are not a result of public procurement. Proactive disclosure in that. The $100,000, is that straight from the act? It seems like a high figure for our small municipality. And since we've already been called that by a resident and that for questioning our procurement, it just struck me as a high figure.
I apologize, that was 29,
That's,
the accountability and transparency.
accountability and transparency and
Point 9.
4, yeah, it's 4, which is open government, point 9, number 9 underneath it.
Just one moment.
No problem. Now, actually, I have a few questions under that open government piece there, so. Let me pull it up.
So number 4, open government, Madam Mayor?
Yes,
Yes.
okay, we'll go to number 9, which is the proactive disclosure of executed contract with a value of $100,000 or more. I just wondered, the $100,000 seems like a high figure, is that straight out of the act?
Let me look at that for you and I'll clarify.
Okay.
Okay, next question.
Okay, and number 7 under that same area talks about reporting following closed sessions, indicating either the date of the confidential report can be made public or a legal opinion indicating why the report cannot be made public. Proactively make confidential reports public upon the reporting out dates. Do we have a specific formula for the dates? Is it 1 year after the fact or 2 years or what?
So through you, Madam Mayor, it depends on what it is. If, for example, say council was negotiating purchase of land. So obviously, if you give instructions to staff to go out and negotiate a purchase price, we're not going to release that information to the public until such time as a deal has been negotiated, et cetera, that kind of thing. So no specific date, it depends on the activity.
Okay. And 0.6, accessible formats and communication supports procedure. We have one of those?
That's under the AODA, so the Accessibility for Interior Disabilities Act. So we have to follow what the AODA, so and again, it depends on what the individual's coming in to request, so, and the format and that type of thing.
Okay. And appointment policy, recruit and select members of advisory committees and boards. And that under open government, so. We haven't really done well in.
We don't have any real boards or anything. We did when we first started and they repealed them. So, but going forward, if any of the recreation committees would like to be, or if they
Big
look at
Sandy Bay.
yeah.
Yeah, we need to get on to that. Also under 0.6, and that, when we get to the monitoring and contraventions, talks in the case of a closed meeting, the meeting's investigator. Who's that?
So that's our integrity commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I apologize on that.
Okay.
The meetings investigator, the municipality has not appointed, and therefore it automatically goes to the ombudsman. My apologies.
Okay. There's one, the parental leave piece, Matt, as you pointed out, was only for the members of council, but under responsibility, it says members of council and township staff are responsible. Is that the right wording for and township staff? In that one, that's 003-24.
I apologize, my now, I'll just have to.
No worries.
pull that up. And which section I'm following?
Responsibilities. It says members of council and township staff are responsible for managing parameters in this policy, so maybe it's appropriate, I just didn't.
I will clarify and get back.
Okay. Now,
Sir, we have 2 minutes left. I'm wondering in the sake of time, I'm finishing on that. Could you forward those questions to?
no, we'll be voting on these bylaws today.
No, just first and second reading now.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, and I can put it off, like, there's a few more questions. Yes. Okay.
So moved by Councillor Holton, second by Councillor Ackley, first and second readings be granted to bylaw numbers 029, 030, 031, and 036, 2024. All those in favor? Motion carried. And the last one is that 3 readings and final pass, moved by Deputy Mayor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Ackley, that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaw number 036, 2024, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council. All those in favor? Motion carried. And the final one is moved by Councillor DeBlancy, seconded by Councillor Ackley, that the regular meeting of council held on September the 9th, 2024, adjourned. All those in favor?
At 128.